What's up, YouTube? I'm here doing my prediction video for UFC 253. Let's start at the bottom. The first fight is Khadz, I can't say his last name, versus Danilo Marques. And to me, I think this fight can go either way. I think Khadz is probably the better overall wrestler and striker, but I think Danilo is the better overall grappler. I don't think there's a huge advantage for Khadz in either area. I know that there's a huge advantage in the jiu-jitsu for Danilo. Khadz's biggest weakness is he tends to gas, but this has been a coin flip in my head like the whole time I've been thinking about this fight. But I'm slightly leaning towards Danilo. I just feel like if he ever gets this to the ground, he's got a big advantage in terms of the submission game. I think if Khadz can keep it on the feet, he'll probably win. But even that is questionable. But I do think that Danilo eventually forces this to the ground and wins by sub. Next is Juan Espino versus Jeff Hughes. And this is basically two really good wrestlers. Juan's probably the better overall grappler. Hughes is definitely the better striker of the two. I'm not really sure what's going to happen in this fight just because we haven't seen Juan in so long. I think that if Juan is still at the level he was when he came into the UFC, he should win. I think his overall wrestling and grappling game, he's got the advantage. I think he could pin Jeff against the fence and just kind of out-wrestle him. But like I said, he's been out for like 2 years, so I don't know how he's going to look coming back, and that's my biggest fear. I am going to pick Juan, but I'm just saying, like, he might not look the same. Like, who knows whatever injury he had since it kept him out this long if he's going to be able to fight anywhere near the level that he was when he was on The Ultimate Fighter. But if he is, then I feel like his wrestling should be better than Jeff's, and he should edge out a decision. Next is William Knight versus Aleksei Kamur. And to me, William, I think, is a very big, powerful striker. I think Aleksei is more of a fast, precise striker. They're both knockout artists, but I just think Aleksei has the faster hands and the better speed overall. I think William is more, like I said, more power-based, and like I said, I think Aleksei, as long as he doesn't get sloppy, I think his speed is going to be the big difference, because he's just a more natural, like, thinner, light heavyweight, versus William, who's just this big, muscular, tank. And I think as long as Aleksei, just uses his speed to poke at him, he should be able to either win a decision or win by TKO late. Next is Shane Young versus, I can't say this guy's first name, Kellen. To me, Kellen looks like he's a good striker and jiu-jitsu guy, but he's only fought mediocre dudes, and to me, it makes me wonder how good he actually is. Shane Young, I'm not saying he's the greatest fighter ever, but he's at least fought good people and looked good doing it. He has wins and losses. His record's like 13-4, but like I said, he's fought good people, as were Levet, or I can't say his name very good. I just think that he's only fought mediocre people, and his record's 15-2, but he's lost. His 2 losses are just to really below average people. And to me, I just think that Shane is just the better overall fighter, and he's fought higher level competition, and I think that he's probably going to win. Next is Diego Sanchez versus Jake Matthews, and to me, if this is on the feet, Jake wins all day. On the ground, it's pretty competitive, but I'd still pick Jake. I think Jake is the more natural 170er. I think his body, the older he's gotten, the more his physique is starting to feel like a 70er. I'm not really even sure why they're doing this fight. I think Jake has gone like 5 or 6-1 in his last like several fights. As where Diego Sanchez, he's 3-1, but he's fighting really bottom of the barrel dudes. I mean, I know Michel Pereira is really good, but he didn't win that fight. He just kind of got lucky that Michel threw an illegal knee and he won by DQ. But other than that, he's fighting pretty below average people at this point. And to me, I think Jake Matthews is, right outside the top 15. He's at least somewhere in the top 20. So I just feel like on the ground it'll be competitive, but on the feet, Jake Matthews is just going to take this easy. And I think this is going to be kind of like the Michael Chiesa fight, where it's competitive, but Michael Chiesa won all 3 rounds pretty clearly. And I think that's just going to be this fight too. I think Jake Matthews is going to win all 3 rounds pretty clearly. If not, he might win by TKO. Next is Brad Rendell versus Alex Da Silva, and to me, this fight's pretty simple. I think Brad's the much better striker, and I think that his overall wrestling game is too good. We've seen guys struggle to take him down and hold him down, and I think Alex Da Silva, the longer this fight goes, the more exhausted he's going to get trying to force takedowns, because Alex is well-rounded. He's primarily, I would say I wouldn't say he's good either or I mean, he's equally good at striking and grappling is what I meant to say. I just think on the feet, Brad's a lot better, and I think on the ground, his takedown defense is just too good, and I think Silva's just going to waste a lot of energy trying to take him to the ground and not be successful. And I just think Brad's going to eventually tire him out and win by knockout or TKO in like the late second, early third. So I got Brad Brindle winning by either second or third round knockout. Next, we got Hakeem Duquesnoy versus Zabir Tugimov. To me, this is kind of like, just two really good kickboxers going at it. I don't think there's going to be a ton of grappling. Neither guy really goes for that many takedowns. I mean, Zabura might a little bit just to maybe edge out rounds, but for the most part, this is just going to be kickboxing. And I think Hakeem has more power, but I think Zabura is a little bit faster and cleaner with his technique. Or I wouldn't say faster, I'd just say cleaner with his technique. I'd say speed-wise, they're about even. This fight really is a coin flip because it's one of those things where it's a lot like Juan versus Jeff Hughes, except for with striking, where you don't know what the wrestling is going to look like in that fight until they clash up, and you're not going to be. I think the technique and the striking and all that shit is going to be pretty fucking even, right up until the end of the rounds, basically, where one guy's probably just going to slightly edge out the other one. Either way, I'm slightly leaning towards Zabura just because if he does need to, I think he could hit takedowns and just steal rounds. So I'm leaning with Zabira to win a really close split decision. Next is Katlyn Vieira versus Sijara Eubanks. And to me, I feel like these chicks are like the same fighter. It's just Vieira's a little bit better at everything. I mean, Sijara might have slightly better overall jiu-jitsu, but I think in terms of takedown defense and striking, Vieira's got a pretty big advantage in both. I think that her technique on the feet is a little bit better, and I think her overall wrestling game is a bit better than Sijara's. In terms of the jiu-jitsu, like I said, Sijara might have a slight advantage, but I just think that she's not the greatest wrestler, and she's not gonna be able to have a really easy time taking down Vieira. And I think Vieira is just gonna edge out at least 2 of the 3 rounds and win a 29-28 decision. Next is Kai Kara-France versus Brandon Royval, and to me, we've seen France fight this fight like 3 times in the UFC, where it's like a pretty decent striker with really good jiu-jitsu. He's just really good at not falling into submissions at this point in his career. He's good at just being on top of guys and just hitting them. Like, 2 or 3 of his fights in the UFC have just been these dudes who go nonstop for submissions, and he's been able to stay on top of them the whole time and just hit them repeatedly. I think that he's definitely the much better striker going into this fight. I think Royval is an okay striker. He's not a bad striker. It's just a lot of his strikes are these, he throws whatever he wants because he's not afraid to go to the ground. And that's kind of what helps his striking out a lot, is that he doesn't really care, because even if he gets taken down, he's where he wants to be. And, like I said, I think Kai Kara-France is just the much better striker, and I think on the ground, unless Royval's on top of Kai, which I don't really see happening because I think Kai's the much better wrestler, I think Kai can just stay on top of him and just hit him with whatever he wants whenever he wants. And I don't think he's going to get caught in a submission. I don't think he'll finish Royval, but I think he's going to win a pretty dominant 30-27 decision. So I'm going with Kai Kara-France. Next, we got Dominic Reyes versus Jan Blachowicz. And to me, my biggest fear in this fight for Reyes is that he's consistently shown that once it gets into the 3rd round of fights, he slows down considerably. Every single fight I've ever seen him in, after the first 2 rounds, he slows down a lot. And Jan used to do shit like that. He used to slow down a lot, but I feel like when you see fights like the one with Jacare and all that, he kept a good pace for all 5 rounds. He looked like he had more energy than Jacare going into the 5th, and Jacare had been wrestling with him against the fence most of the fight. I think that is a big weakness of Jan's. That's always been a big weakness, is he's not great at getting his back off the fence, and that's something that Dominic could exploit. But other than that, I think that after the first 2 rounds, if Jan hasn't been caught by something, I think he's going to start to take over. I think his technique and striking is overall better. I just think Reyes has more volume and is more athletic, and in the first 2 rounds, is just going to be able to take advantage of that because he's faster too. But once he starts to slow down, and it's just technique versus technique, and they're throwing about the same amount, I think Jan's the better striker. And also in terms of overall grappling, I think Jan's much better on the ground. I don't think this fight will hit the ground. I think Reyes, even when he's tired, his takedown defense is amazing. And I think Jan's shown amazing takedown defense too. But like I said, anywhere on the ground, Jan's got the advantage. He's definitely the much more seasoned black belt in jiu-jitsu. I don't think this fight hits the ground ever. I just think that the longer this fight goes, the more it's going to favor Jan. And unless he gets caught early, then I think come rounds 3, 4, and 5, we're going to see him start to take over. And I wouldn't be surprised if he starts throwing a lot of leg kicks and those add up and he gets a finish in like the 4th or the 5th. So I'm leaning towards Jan to win by late TKO. Next is Israel Adesanya versus Paulo Costa, and my biggest fear with this fight is the fight Paulo Costa had with Uriah Hall. I was forgetting his name. Uriah Hall was pretty much, even though Costa landed a lot of body shots, I feel like Hall was able to hit him with jabs and straight shots whenever he wanted, and he was moving back the whole time. I feel like Israel's just a much better version of Uriah. I think that, he's able to throw those same type of strikes while moving backwards, and he's probably not going to get caught to the body as often. Um, and Uriah Hall dropped Paulo Costa in that fight with a solid straight shot down the middle. And to me, like, as much as I want Paulo to win, because I'm not a big Israel fan, and I really feel like Israel lost his last fight. I didn't think that fight was that close. I thought it was boring as shit, but I thought Yoel pretty clearly won it 3-2. I just don't see how Paulo Costa wins this fight. Like, in all honesty, the way he fights everybody is he just marches them down and throws a lot of volume. And I just don't see him doing that to Israel. I don't think he's ever going to pin him against the fence or anything like that. And like I said, as much as I would love for Paulo Costa to win, I just don't know how he can. Like, he throws really good shots and he packs a lot of power, but it is like a volume thing with him at the exact same time. And I don't think he's going to land that volume. I think Israel's just too fast. And like I said, I want Costa to win. I just don't see it. I think Israel's just going to pick him apart from the outside and probably put him down with the same type of strike that Uriah did. It might take him more than one to do that, but I think he's going to drop him with that same type of strike more than once and eventually get the finish. Kind of like how he did with Robert Whitaker, where he had to drop him like 2 or 3 times before he finished him. But I see the same kind of thing overall, where it's going to be kind of like the Whitaker fight, / Uriah Hall fight, minus Costa winning. I think Israel, like I said, picks him apart, lands the clean strike eventually, and just wins by knockout in like the second or third round. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please like and subscribe.